Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the October Lochaber Area Committee meeting. I think we have apologies for absence. We have Councillor Andrew Baldry. Does anyone have any declarations of interest? No. So moving on to our first item today, item 3 on the agenda is Chief Inspector Ross McCartney, who's here to give us the latest committee performance report, which we all received the document. So good morning and thank you very much for joining us, Ross.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for having me along. I'm hoping you can all see me all right. Certainly the glow from the winter sun tends to play havoc with my teams, and often it looks as if I'm sitting in quite a glum office, which I am not. So, good morning, everybody. I hope everyone is well. I'll take you through the report. I won't take you through all of the report and the stats at the end because I would be talking forever, and I won't put you through that, but certainly I'll go through Lochaber at a glance and then invite questions if that's okay, Chair.
Yes, that's very good. Thank you very much.
Excellent, thank you. So, yes, Chief Inspector or Acting Chief Inspector Ross McCartney take up post in Lochaber around about 3 months ago. Now, certainly I came back to Lochaber, started in the Highlands in around 2017, where I was based in Lochaber, certainly as a sergeant, before going to Skye after a number of years as an inspector, and then transferring back to Fort William in January of 2023 as an inspector, and getting an opportunity at acting chief inspector within the last few months. So certainly from myself, the purpose of the report is to provide an update to the committee board on the progress with reference to the objectives outlined in the Highland Policing Plan 2020 to 2023. So it'll be year 3, and that's against the agreed priorities. This report will cover the 1st of April 2022 to the 31st of March 2023. So the interpretation of statistics continues to be a key part of what we do, identifying potential crime trends and ensuring that I have the right officers in the right place to keep our communities safe. We do compare data on previous years. However, it's certainly got to be recognised and highlighted that we may be some years before we can accurately compare year-on-year data as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has undoubtedly had an impact on crime reporting and our statistics. I'm always happy to discuss the data and provide some context around the statistics within the report, either in this forum or out with this forum. Happy to be contacted at any time. We're now following the COVID-19 challenges, facing some real cost of living challenges, which impact all of our communities, and I know is felt by certainly everybody, including those who have not felt such hardship before. My team are continuing to work with partners to protect the vulnerable people within our communities, as we'll get on to discuss. Obviously, as a result of the COVID pandemic, it forced a lot of daily life and daily business online, which then, unfortunately, nationally, seen an uptrend in cyber crime. So we maintain our presence on our Highland roads, enforcing road traffic legislation, improving road safety, and investigating road traffic collisions. I know this has been a particular area of concern, especially with the notable increase in visitors to the Highlands. My team continue to engage with the Visitor Management Plan, which is chaired by Dot, and many thanks to Dot for her work and keeping us on the right track in relation to visitor management work. And we obviously work with various partners to ensure that the Highlands continues to be a safe, enjoyable place to visit, and that the involvement of the police in that is in the right areas. I'm also pleased to report that there's been a decrease over this year in relation to serious assaults, given the removal of social distancing and all previous COVID restrictions lifted. with our licensed premises and annual events now fully returned. Certainly there have been a lot of large-scale events which we as the police have been involved in, to varying degrees, and I certainly would, I would say that all the events were a success, and it's been good for us to be part of those events in the larger Lochaber area. Fraud continues to cause some concerns, with individuals falling victim to various methods of fraud. We have attempted to increase publicity around these areas and work with financial institutions to reinforce messages around keeping money safe. It won't be lost on anybody on this forum as to certainly the challenges in and around investigating online cybercrime and frauds, and we are very much committed to certainly getting the message out there, to being available should anybody have concerns in and around this. And there are certainly lots of forums online that our communities can go to should they receive a suspicious phone call, a suspicious text. Very convincing, I'll say, messages and phone calls received, and very difficult to almost tell a genuine phone call or text message apart. So, as I say, certainly lots of support mechanisms online. You will note as well from the report, there's a slight reduction in missing person inquiries from last year. A proportion of these missing person inquiries relate to looked after children failing to return home when required to. Missing person inquiries place a significant demand on our resources, certainly locally. And I know at the previous area committee, Isla Campbell had informed you that we in Lochaber had a designated officer who was a single point of contact for each looked after facility, and I'm certainly glad and happy to report that that's been a success, and we're obviously seeing the results of that success, and that there has been a slight reduction in missing person inquiries. However, I'll caveat that with what you will undoubtedly see on the police Facebook social media page. It's certainly local to ourselves. We face great challenges in relation to missing persons within remote areas, within mountain sections, and certainly the beauty spots of our geographical area, all of which place a significant demand on ourselves as well as our partner resources. And again, I would be remiss not to certainly acknowledge the work of our voluntary mountain rescue teams. It's absolutely unbelievable, and certainly me myself, I'm in awe of the volunteers and also their families that are obviously impacted by such jobs and such incidents when they're deployed on the hill Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and all plans go out of the window. So my personal thanks to them. Our work tackling serious and organised crime continues. We continue to disrupt these individuals, and working effectively with partners is key. We use these relationships to identify individuals that are vulnerable to exploitation, making early interventions and making the Highlands inhospitable to serious and organised crime groups. Finally, the implementation of technology within Police Scotland, I hope, will continue. Certainly, we've seen new crime recording platforms and also an investment throughout Police Scotland on PDAs, so electronic notebooks, personal devices, which ultimately takes a lot of our office-based administration and systems online to allow officers to spend more time in the communities. And certainly that is the message that comes out from myself to the local officers, that we have that technology that allows us to be out, and whether that be sit in a cafe or go around and do a visit or a talk in a school, we also are able to then catch up on paperwork whilst doing that, so we don't have to return to the office spending several hours within the office to an administrative function. However, the recent budget announcement of cuts to the police service, these may not progress as promptly as we would prefer. These budget cuts continue to impact negatively on our policing footprint across the board. So I know certainly that there was a briefing came out from Chief Superintendent Shepherd in relation to budget constraints and cuts and how that impacts us as a police force, as a local police force and national. And we will, we'll certainly be following closely the technological updates that we will see in the future. I should also highlight that certainly in this year, we've seen a significant investment in police housing. So with a stock of police housing across Lochaber, certainly houses in Strontian have recently been completed, a major refurb for the houses in Strontian as well as the police station. Houses in Mallaig are also are due to be undergoing a refurb, and the houses in Glencoe are in the process of undergoing a refurb, which personally, myself, I certainly am pleased with that, because knowing the challenges of looking to remain, what shall we say, remain a good prospect, an interesting prospect for officers elsewhere in Police Scotland to want to come and work in our areas. Housing challenges can impact that significantly. We could be in a position which we are not now, thankfully, but times have seen us previously. We are in a position where officers and staff would like to come and work in the area. However, we're not able to find or facilitate accommodation. So I certainly see this as a major investment and commitment to our communities across the Lochaber area, that we are renovating these properties for officers. Probably the last thing just on my introduction is I'm certainly aware of the challenges that are faced and particularly in relation to road policing or the roads, and also antisocial behaviour and disorder within our communities and Fort William itself, and we're certainly committed to tackling that. And the message from myself to my officers is that we will remain committed to tackling that and working closely with our partners to make sure that we play our part. So just to highlight the local policing priorities: road safety and road crime, acquisitive crime, serious and organised crime, antisocial behaviour, violence and disorder, protecting vulnerable people, and terrorism and public order are the priorities across which this report covers. So we're going to Lochaber at a glance. Road safety and road crime, first of all. Overall, road crime offences have decreased by 11.9%. That's 165 fewer offences, majority of which relate to speeding offences, having decreased against the 5-year average. However, have increased 75 more offences against the last year to date, and that can be essentially attributed to, we've come out of COVID, we're seeing a lot more people on the roads, and also certainly we work very closely with a brilliant working relationship with our roads policing department, which we are lucky enough to have housed in Fort William itself. So we work very closely in and around operations such as Operation Cedar, the challenge, educate, detect and reduce. And we put a lot of time in there, as well as a partnership with the camera safety unit to have that mobile camera out and about in places of concern in Lochaber. Mobile telephone offences have increased. That's by 150%. Sounds a lot, but it's 16 more offences detected against the 5-year average, and have increased by 16 more offences across this year as opposed to the previous reporting year. And failure to insure against third-party risk offences, so your insurance type offences, have decreased 8 fewer over the 5-year average, and decreased by 24 fewer offences against the last year to date. As I say, we're certainly, we have a close working relationship with our road policing colleagues, and we've had a number of officers trained in using the speed detection equipment. There are various areas of concern for which the public notify us that make their way onto a daily patrol plan, and as and when time allows, we request that officers are out there and doing speed checks, etc. Operation Close Pass, which many will know as an education method to being out there and conducting an operation which essentially looks to highlight how much distance should be given to cyclists on our roads. We're in the process of trying to get officers, a select few officers trained in the Lochaber area, which would allow us to undertake that operation locally. At the moment, it's facilitated by close pass officers trained between Inverness and road policing officers here. So we're looking to get that local capability. And certainly I know that it's been a concern before in relation to collision investigation and the times taken for such equipment, etc., to make its way to the Lochaber area. I'm certainly pleased to report that we do now have collision investigation equipment and also collision investigation trained officers here locally in Lochaber. Again, I'll caveat that with what I know has been raised previously in relation to the very nature of these incidents being serious, possibly life-changing or fatal. They certainly do take time, and given our road network and road structure, a closure on the most remotest of roads, or one route in, one route out, can cause significant challenges. So certainly the investment in the kit being held locally now, and that investment in officers now being trained in collision investigation, I know won't be lost on any of us, and we continue to try as best we can in reducing time and impact of these incidents. Obviously, we also continue to work closely with the care for people side of things. Should we and Highland Council, should we have to close a road, we certainly have our partners on speed dial to make sure there's a smooth response. Moving on, antisocial behaviour, disorder and violence, including alcohol and drugs misuse. You'll see from the report that it's quite a large coverall. Antisocial behaviour, disorder, violence, quite a big business area, and includes serious assaults, which I know I mentioned we've seen a reduction in. However, also includes common assaults, which we've seen an increase in, 19 more crimes, common assaults in the last year to date. And a common assault can be anything as to physical contact or attempted physical contact. So any action which the victim perceives as an attempt to assault them, whether injury or not. And also offences in relation to serious assault I've covered. Antisocial behaviour has increased on the 5-year average, 2.2 more crimes against the 5-year average, and an increase by 17 more crimes against the last year to date. Now, with antisocial behaviour, as I've already alluded to, I'm certainly aware, it's been brought to my attention, antisocial behaviour and the impact that it's having on our communities, more specifically in and around the Fort William town centre area. Certainly personally, this has been added to our daily patrol matrix. All of the sergeants locally and officers have been briefed personally by myself, and we will continue to carry out measures such as increased foot patrols in the area, engage with businesses, business owners. I would encourage members of the public, business owners, members of the community to continue to please report any incidents of antisocial behaviour, assaults, violent or disorderly conduct to us, to allow us to deal with that, and also to allow us to accurately assess the picture and nominals that may be involved. We continue to work closely with the Youth Action Team. Our Preventions and Interventions Officer locally, PC Page MacDonald, continues to deliver briefings, certainly talks in school, also crime prevention surveys which she undertakes, and engage locally with essentially youths in schools. We continue to support diversionary methods such as the Monday night football, which I know has been a significant success, and Jim and Mary have certainly, I take my hat off to them. I think it's been excellent. It's been excellent for to give the youth somewhere to go, and certainly more schemes like it would be welcomed. We certainly continue to play our part in that, and are happy to do so in the future. And also the Community Alcohol Partnership was launched, and it's been successful, and we continue to play a leading role certainly in the Community Alcohol Partnership, and assess how our licensed premises are engaged with, and also youths and alcohol, how accessible it is, and what we can do as a police and as a collective to reduce the alcohol availability. Drugs remain committed to tackling drugs as an organisation, but also as local. Certainly, we work very closely with our local and more widely across the Highlands and Islands partnerships, internal and external partners, to assess intelligence and information that we receive and act appropriately, be that by way of executing warrants, which I'm sure some will have seen recently on the Highlands and Islands Facebook page. Again, a plea from myself would be anybody that sees anything ongoing or believes there's drug dealing or drug taking ongoing in our communities, I would plea or make a plea for that to be reported, whether it's to local police or whether that is to Crime Stoppers anonymously or any other one of our partner agencies who can feed it into the police. We are certainly very much intelligence and information led in relation to drugs, and also it's massive not to forget that enforcement is only a small part of it, and certainly that addiction clearly causes pain in the families and our communities. So we'll continue to do our part in working closely with partners and how we support people out of addiction, signposting to relevant and appropriate supportive organisations. Moving on to acquisitive crime. Overall, acquisitive crime has decreased over the 5-year average. It's essentially 5 fewer crimes, and increased 30 more crimes against the last year to date. Offences in relation to housebreaking, dwelling houses have increased by 8 more crimes over the last year to date, and fraud offences have increased 14 more crimes against the last year to date. So having a look at those figures, we talk about the majority of frauds being online, the majority of frauds being that phone call tending to be from a bank or from a fraud department and looking for you to transfer money out. As I say, there's certainly a lot of information on the Police Scotland website and also other partner agency websites in relation to identifying fraudulent activity. And I would quite like to highlight that the extent in which these individuals will go to defraud a victim and then repeatedly defraud that victim. We work closely with victims, and we certainly support and provide prevention and intervention advice and assistance after a fraud's been reported to us. But they're very cunning in the way in which these crimes are carried out, to the extent of asking you to phone your bank and asking what number you're going to phone, and then having the technology to intercept that phone call if you've provided them with the number you're looking to phone, and then continue to pretend to be the bank or fraud department. So we also have the banking protocol, which I think works very well, and that will see an individual attend a bank, and if the bank teller or staff has any indication that there's fraudulent activity or any concern, then the police will be notified immediately to allow us to respond and step in and ensure that everything is legit. Housebreakings, as can be seen there, 8 more crimes over this year than last year to date to dwelling houses. And certainly that is a piece of ongoing work for ourselves, and I continue to work closely with our criminal investigations department in relation to how we investigate housebreakings. Yep.
Can I suggest, we've all got these stats here.
Yep.
You've given a very good input, and I'm sure we've all got questions, and I wonder if that would be a good idea, is to concentrate on them.
Absolutely, Councillor.
We've got very, very detailed reports, but I for one would like to concentrate on the practicalities of things.
Yep, that's fine. If you're yeah, thank you very much for your summary and the update in the report, which we've all, yeah. So I think Angus, we'll start with Angus because I think he has some questions.
Thank you. Ross, you and I have been in touch about this, and it comes back to the vandals. So the public toilets have again been trashed in Fort William, and they did happen in Ballywhich in this time in the summer. Some electric bikes have been thrown in the lock, and the kids have certainly been running around them. I don't know how they have access to them, but I've spoken to the guys who do the electric bikes, and they said it's a significant problem in Fort William, much more so than anybody anticipated. And they are definitely doing stuff in the high street which is incredibly inappropriate and anti-visitor friendly. And we do report them, and we ring 121, and we get nowhere, basically. And I don't think you guys read about it until it's far too late. There is no way, as far as I can understand, of us reporting that. We spoke 6 months ago about you having bicycles, and I admittedly not on the high street the whole time, but I haven't seen your guys using electric bikes going up and down the high street, but maybe they have been happening. There's a lot of police guys in cars driving around, and there's not a lot of foot patrols, and we don't need 2 people at a time, in my opinion. You know the names of the guys because everybody in town does, and I sent them to you, of the kids involved. And so I would say that we have quite a major problem with this in Fort William. And despite being told that the police presence would be upped and we'd have a lot more foot patrol, I don't think we are seeing it. So there's a fantastic data here about the enormous amount of people being caught for speeding and other traffic offences. But I can tell you that this is really impacting the town centre. So, you know, I wonder what you think we can do if we make a big difference.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor. Certainly, you know, to come back to the number, so it's 101. 101's the contact number, and also email contact us. So contact us on the Police Scotland website is an efficient way of reporting as well. I do not underestimate the challenges in contacting the 101 service and some delays, given that the 999 service is prioritised, quite rightfully so, given the very nature of that emergency line. But I would continue to urge people to phone 101, as you've said, Councillor, and email contact us with regards to the issues. I'm aware through our correspondence and that of others in relation to the electric bikes and the toilets being damaged and the antisocial behaviour that is occurring in Fort William Town Centre. I would be shocked to know or to find that foot patrols haven't been increased and you've not seen an increased police presence on the high street, given certainly it was a personal briefing from myself requesting that, and I have had regular updates which I seek from sergeants in relation to when they've been on the high street, who they've engaged with, and on a number of occasions spending up to an hour, sometimes more, being on the high street and engaging with youths, visitors, and the local business community. So that is something that I'll continue to monitor, and certainly would welcome any feedback if you do not feel that there is a sufficient presence on the high street, then it's certainly something I'll take back to my teams. But as I say, I am receiving updates to say that they are doing it. So I will be out there myself at one point as well on foot, and I'll take a walk along and speak with some of the business community myself to make sure that they're seeing it. In relation to certainly the bikes, we have had previous links with the the company that has oversight of the electric bikes, and I know previously there was issues in relation to the actual software that's on the bikes and being able to override that, etc. So I'll certainly need to get an updated picture on that and how we can put measures in place along with the organisation, or how we can support the organisation to put measures in place that would make it more difficult for these bikes to be taken and vandalised or left or into the canal, as you've mentioned. Certainly,
Ross, the people you need, it's High Trans who are now overseeing the e-bike scheme.
Excellent, thank you very much. We'll get a link in with High Trans to see how we can certainly play a part in that. The toilets as well, it's something I'll need to have a look at in relation to the CCTV, etc., and get a better picture around. But undoubtedly, we are out in cars a lot, and the very nature of our business, unfortunately, demands that foot patrols are carried out as and when we are able to do so. We obviously need to balance that with response times. So if you're 20 minutes away from a car, or in the other unit or 2 units in the area are tied up with whatever other incidents are ongoing, we need to be aware over the entire area what we have resource-wise to ensure that we're not 20 minutes away from that car and there isn't any other units to go to an emergency job that may come in that may be life critical. But absolutely take on your points, councillor, and we'll most certainly work closely with everyone going forward in relation to our presence on the high street and maximising that presence and providing or signposting to diversionary methods.
I think there's no point in having people there before 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So
okay.
It would almost always be from when school is out onwards for your information. We would be really grateful if something could be done.
Thanks, Ross. Just before Thomas comes in with a question, perhaps if the next meeting, if you have the data to show how you're increasing presence on the high street, might be a good idea. If you've got any historical data and can collect it ongoing. Thomas has got a question.
Thanks. It was just following on from that and the behaviour on the high street. It used to be that we had CCTV the length of Fort William High Street, and I've been in Fort William Police Station, the old one, when it was a presence in the high street, where somebody actively sat and monitored it and followed groups of kids up the high street and could liaise with officers. If I compare and contrast that from, say, 10, 15 years ago, how do we compare today with that? Because it would appear to me that there's nobody actually watching and recording and zooming in on incidents at the moment. Because I've seen it, we've all seen incidents in the high street, and there doesn't seem to be a police presence arriving. So how are we as regards CCTV and actively monitoring what's going on in our community?
Yeah, so the cameras are certainly still on the high street. We still have a presence on the high street, and they're still monitored by a full-time member of staff. One member of staff, I would highlight, and works a rota, so they are not monitored 24/7. When they are being monitored, if any behaviour is being observed, crimes ongoing, etc., there is a facility, and that is radioed directly out to officers who are on the beat, who will attend and deal with that. Anything retrospectively reported, we have the facility to review the CCTV and use it in any form of proceedings, evidential cases, etc.
What then happens if there's a 14 or 15-year-old?
Hang on, Angus,
Sorry.
and then
Uh,
Thomas.
sorry. I was going to say, like, if really, I think it would be maybe more beneficial if that monitoring was increased. I.e., if we've only got one member of staff, he's probably working for 8 hours out of 24. There's 2/3 of the time where there's nobody monitoring it, and I think it would be beneficial to us overall if you upped that and targeted more officers to the problem area. It's just my thoughts.
Yeah, councillor, I would certainly agree with you, albeit it's housed within Fort William Police Station, I believe, and Dot might keep me right on this one. I believe is it Highland Council contracted, Dot?
I think it used to be through the Highland Safety Camera Partnership, but I don't know, it was through our street lighting section. So I can take that away and just double check.
Thanks for that, Dot. Sorry to put you on the spot there. Certainly, I would agree with upping the staff if we could have it monitored 24/7. Obviously, it would certainly be beneficial for all involved. But I do understand the realistic challenges in that.
Are you any more questions, Thomas, before John, and then Angus, and then Sarah? Right. Okay. Okay.
Ross, one of the things I don't understand, just say there is as is the instance, a 15-year-old boy peeing in the square in the middle of the summer, in August, in daylight. And so I go down and remonstrate with the guy. We report it in 101, okay? That guy, what would happen to him? I mean, you guys would come back to us and say, well, he's too young to do anything about it. And so the boy basically, well, he just gives us the finger, How do we stop that happening in the future? He'll come back the next day and do it again.
Yeah, so totally understand your concerns here, councillor, and it's not the case that nothing would happen. There are early intervention youth offending mechanisms that would kick into play, and whether that be somebody is given an early and hopefully effective intervention, or whether they don't meet the criteria for that, as they've been involved in youth offending before, in which case we would look to see if triggers are met for a report to the Scottish Children's Reporters Agency. As you've quite rightly highlighted, age does play a factor in it, but it is by no means a carte blanche to go out and commit offences with no repercussions. So a lot of the behaviour that goes on, not always will we come back and say they have been charged, etc. Sometimes as well, these things can take a while. They can take many months to go through, just by the very nature of it, to ensure that partner agencies such as social work services, youth action teams, support services are engaging with that, with that youth, keen not to criminalise children. However, I do completely understand that there are potentially repeat offenders, and they will be dealt with and are being dealt with.
Thanks. Are you on the same topic,
Yes,
Sarah?
on the same
Okay.
topic. Thank you, Ross, for the report and data. I've got more questions later, but sticking to this topic, particularly the bikes. I've had constituents coming to me and complaining about, the bad behavior on the bikes. And you mentioned earlier that there are ways of making it more difficult for some people to access those bikes if they indulge in antisocial behavior on the bikes. The problem is because apparently you can block their account, for example, and stop them using the bike. So I reported that to the constituents, and they said, yes, but how can I identify the bike? I know they have a number, but the number is not really visible. would there be a better way of making sure the public can identify a bike when they report it? If each bike, for example, had a letter or something visible, and you know that at such and such a time, somebody was using bike F in the high street, and we can actually identify the person, actually enclose the account of that person, and people know that the system is in place, and that would deter, actually, that would act as a deterrent. Is there a way of making those bikes more visibly identifiable?
Could I just come in here? You need to, the police don't operate the bike scheme. It's under the management of Hightrans, so you need to, probably better to talk to.
But in that conversation with Hightrans, is it something you would be able to suggest?
It's certainly something we can suggest, Councillor, and I'd be quite happy to create a link between Hightrans and our crime prevention officer to see if there is anything. You know, as you've highlighted yourself, in the very nature of it, if somebody's using the bike and they've managed to overcome the system or the account's been blocked and yet they've still managed to use it, the practicalities of that are that the police, you know, if we're looking to try and deter vandalism to the bikes, etc., we're almost having to engage with a lot of people we see on these bikes to determine whether they're using it out with an account, at which time are we then, and this is something I want to take up with Hightrans, are we then returning that bike, which, you know, will not be lost on anybody here, requires a van. We've got a few cell vans here, and that's then a van and 2 other officers to come along and pick the bike up and then go and return it to prevent an act of vandalism that we think may occur because that person's using it out with an account. So, you know, the challenges of this and tackling the vandalism on the bikes isn't lost on me, and I certainly won't sit here and pretend that it'd be quite easy to resolve, but going forward we'll certainly link in with Hightrans and see whatever we can do, suggest or assist with in relation to try and even get it out on media to say that this is, you know, it's an issue, and I know it's been out there before, I have seen it, so certainly something I'll take away from this meeting.
Thanks, Ross. John.
Thank you, Ross. Very good report, and I was enjoying the little bits that you were adding in as well. That was really useful. Couple of questions. One is a clarification. You mentioned an accident investigations officer or collisions trained officer. It's a few years back now, but I remember that potentially there was only 2 in the entire of the Highlands who were based at Dingwall. Are you now saying that we actually have accident investigation officers in Fort William?
We have 2 in Fort William and a 3rd mid-training, I believe.
Brilliant. That's really good, sort of, because I know how long accident takes, and the travelling time from Dingwall down to the accident was meaning that roads were being closed for incredible amounts of time. Yeah, that's a brilliant one. So just the main point, it's linked with the antisocial behaviour and the fraud and your item protecting vulnerable people. It's quite a sensitive, difficult issue, but I'm wondering if you as a police force, a local police force, have an awareness of the vulnerable people in the area and where they might be, and a protocol for actually addressing any issues that they bring up. And also in terms of fraud, I'm thinking of disabled people, elderly people, mental health problems, autistic people, who are maybe more vulnerable from fraud incidents, especially with modern technology. And I know it's not specifically your remit, but is there an idea of a method of actually communicating with these people to give them information, to make them aware? And on top of that, there was a banking issue. I've actually been told by my bank, I've had the fraud department ring me up and ask me for confidential information. And I said to them, well, I'm sorry, I can't give you that. You're ringing me, I don't know who you are. And because of that, they actually locked my bank account for 10 days. So there's something about the banking organisations also need to adjust their protocols and not ring up people and ask for personal information. They need to find another way of doing that. So I'm sorry, I know there's a few points in there. Thanks very much.
No, not at all. And thank you for those points, Councillor, very important points. In relation to the banks, I know certainly national level, there is a lot of work ongoing in relation to cybercrime and banking protocols, etc., to see, essentially to identify ways in which protocols can be put in place that aren't going to affect you like they have. However, I completely get that that's more than likely an erring on the side of caution, and it's resulted in yourself having the locked bank account. You see exactly what you've done, councillors, exactly what I would advise people to do, and exactly what the advice says as well. Do not pass any personal details unless it's a phone call that's instigated by yourself in relation to that. So yeah, I get there's work to be done in that space, quite a challenging, fast evolving, fast paced space, and the perpetrators certainly evolve. And on the relation to vulnerable people, we don't hold a vulnerable persons list. Certainly, I'm aware that NHS do hold a vulnerable persons list, and I believe that there are methods in which there are carers, supporters, and whatever it may be, going in to vulnerable people's homes almost on a daily basis and do flag up when they have concerns. I'm aware of that, certainly for what comes through to us, which is then reported to the police as a concern that somebody's maybe had a few phone calls from the same person trying to exploit them. We'll then get involved. So I know there are measures in place and certainly pathways to go from identifying a concern to the police and also our partner agency, social work as well.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I haven't heard anything lately. I know there was some incidences in Cool with a disabled lady and some youths. That was actually during the winter. I'm just concerned that sort of behaviour sort of comes back again when we get the darker nights. That's why I was asking the question about your awareness, because this is a specific area. It's happened over 2 years, I think, with a disabled lady, and sort of a police awareness of that, I think, might help in terms of, okay, yeah, we know there's this particular situation in this particular area, so if we hear something, maybe a quicker response or something else. I know the manpower shortages and so on. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
No, do you know, and sorry, if you wouldn't mind, just quickly on that point, see if you would send me over the details of that individual. It's certainly something I can put out as a brief to officers to make sure that we are undertaking increased patrols in the area and we have a link with the supporters and carers that may be going in.
That's lovely, thank you.
Thanks, Ross. I think I've just got one last question, and then I think we might wrap up. Just looking at the graphs for the hate crime, domestic crime and drink driving offences, the comparisons with other areas, just wondering if you have any insight into why Lochaber is for that much higher than Badenoch, Strathspey and Nairn. Why? Is it because we have a higher population, which I'm not sure it would be correct, but yeah, any insight into that? Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm certainly not. I cannot comment on the population, unfortunately, because I'm not aware of that. However, speaking for the hate crime stats in particular, we certainly did have one or two individuals that were targeted on a number of occasions, which a lot of those stats will be higher as a result of them being repeat victims, the offenders of which were identified and were reported for the matters in concern. So the only thing really I can put that down to is certainly, as I said, some individuals unfortunately facing repeat behaviour.
Yeah, it's just, I guess, the numbers for Lochaber for those, drink driving, hate crime, domestic crime seem to be considerably higher than other areas, and just wondering, was there an overall sense of why this is or not really?
Yeah, so breaking it down then into drink driving, as previously mentioned, we're fortunate enough to have a road policing unit here based in Fort William, a sergeant and a team of officers that are out and patrol our trunk roads, etc. So I would like to think that you know, whilst I'm certainly not saying that the other areas don't receive the same road policing presence, we are fortunate enough to have a team based here who are out and proactively out. You'll notice as well that the drug offences are up as well by 14 on the last year to date, drug and drink drive offences, and that is down to having the capability to do the roadside drug wipe and having individuals brought into the station there at that time. Domestic offences as well. I see that actually there's been a reduction in Lochaber in domestic offences. However, what I would say is that, you know, we work very closely with our national partners in relation to domestic victims, supporting domestic victims, but also having a look at the backgrounds of domestic perpetrators and trying to build a picture on whether they are repeat perpetrators, trying to, you know, uncover if there have been previous victims who have not come forward. You know, we do our absolute best to be aware of that so that we can deal with that individual robustly for the domestic offences.
Okay, thank you. I guess if any more questions, I think we could contact you going forward. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Anything at all. As I said, more than happy to work with anyone in this meeting today or our partners. My email address, I'm sure, is on the invite, and you know, any emails at all, please contact me.
Yeah, well, yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for your time. And so we note the progress to this report, and we look forward to working with you in the future and seeing you again. Thank you for all your good work.
No, thank you. What I'll quickly say is, and I should have said it before, is that as of next Tuesday, and many around the table will probably know Sergeant Katie Duncan, one of the local sergeants on the team. She will be stepping up to acting inspector of Lochaber for the area, backfilling myself, carrying out the acting CI role. So once she's in post next Tuesday, we'll get an email out and I'll share Katie's email with you all for reference. But thank you very much for your time and questions.
Yep, thank you very much, Ross. Have a good day.
Take care.
Thank you, Ross. Bye-bye.
So next item is item 4, Lochaber Community Partnership, and we have Group Commander Mike Collier online to talk to us, I think, and we've had a report. So good morning, Mike, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, Chair. And I'd like to say I'm grateful I'm not in police and I'm in fire because of the grilling that Ross got there. So I'm quite pleased about that. But thank you very much for letting me come in today. I have also just lost all our electrics out here in Kishorn. Power's gone off, so I'm on my laptop charging. So if I disappear, I apologise, but I'll do my very best to remain with you.
Thank you. We'll keep our fingers crossed. So I think we've had it. Yeah, we have had a report. I don't know if you want to briefly summarise it, or are you happy to do that?
So I actually had it up on my other screen just now, and that, again, this has caused issue. My partner's just come through. She's Scottish Government, and all her stuff switched off as well. So in summary, I mean, what I tried to do there was provide you a kind of overarching view of where we currently sit with the plan. The plan itself is still at that stage of development. I think the most significant challenge that we face as individuals dealing with the plan, I'm sure Dot would support this because Dot works very closely with me and supports massively the sort of Fort William area through our Highland Council role and the ward manager, is that we struggle to balance that primary employment against the needs of developing this delivery of this plan and the resourcing of it, etc. What I've tried to highlight in that document I've given to you is that there's been a real shift from Scottish Government and Highland Council towards more of a support mechanism, because that message has probably finally gotten across. As chair, I'm wearing multiple hats, and that's just one of the hats that I have to wear in regards to that chair of Lochaber CPP. It has proven quite difficult. Having spoken to the colleague Jane, who's going to be acting as a development officer, we're actually in a better position than a lot of individuals and other groups. Some are better than us, but more are worse than us. So I took a lot of positives from that. I also have a scheduled CPP meeting this afternoon, which now I will have to relocate to a station to try and dress, because I won't have any power by the time I get to that. So therefore, we're going to have a discussion with the team at that point about the way forward. We have some very clear ideas of how the CPP will move forward. We have some very clear ideas of how we'll have some scrutiny and governance around it, and that should ensure that we have a really robust mechanism in place going forward. One of the things that I will say, and I'll reiterate that, is we have these community action groups in there, the CAGs that I mentioned through that report, and they work extremely hard to deliver to your local communities. They work on the basis of identifying the vulnerabilities, where the positive outcomes would be required, and how we fund that, support that, and develop that. We have the Fort William CAG, we have the Kinlochleven, and we have Cool. So there's three very distinct areas that we've identified within Lochaber that require some attention from ourselves. The Cool, if I take that in the first instance, is run by, and I'm pleased to hear Ross saying there's a backfill there, Scottish Fire and Rescue Service and Police Scotland joint chair that one. And they actually had one of your former councillors in there assisting as well with some delivery in that Cool area. And it worked very well. And I know that they continue to do a lot of good work down there, targeting areas that we think would make improvements. As chair, that gets reported back to me on a quarterly basis. Fort William, Dot works on that area, and there's been a lot of good work done in the sort of what we would call the lower socioeconomic area parts of Fort William to support these, and that work continues. Kinlochleven in itself is a specific area. We had some real significant challenges down in Kinlochleven trying to get buy-in from the community. Emma Taylor, who has unfortunately left us and is moving to pastures new, and John from High Life Highland down there did some really, really good work down there. There's been a huge amount of engagement down in that community, and I'm pleased to say that there's a lot of progress being made, and we continue to do that. John's going to step up and continue that good work down there as we continue. So we do have a wide spectrum of individuals involved in trying to improve for our local communities. It will probably always be a moving feast to some degree because of the nature of society and how things changes and how impacts come along. COVID itself obviously had a great impact on all of our lives. But we will always have that underlying trends and those issues around low pay, vulnerable people, more difficult, some of the things you've just chatted with Ross there, some of those criminal matters that ongoing areas, vandalism, etc. And we'll always try to get it together. But what we will be doing going forward as well, and I did want to implement this previously, there was a lot of discussion about it, and thankfully Highland Council have agreed that they want to do that as well as a thematic sort of meeting. So we will have those meetings where we talk about green matters, we'll talk about infrastructure, we'll talk about poverty. So there'll be very specific individuals coming to our meetings that will help us to deliver a better implementation plan as we go along. So really quite brief for yourselves. I'm happy to take any questions that I can. What I will reiterate is that I'm the chair. So a lot of it comes through me, but a lot of what I do actually is about that delivery and guiding people to deliver in the communities. And as I say, it has proven particularly challenging in the past sort of 12 to 18 months. But hopefully this afternoon we'll see something, and with Jane coming on board, and I don't know if Dot wants to come in and reiterate some sort of communication about that as well. I think we'll probably see an improved way of working going forward. So hopefully that helps, Chair.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mike. And I think Dot is happy that you've covered everything. Certainly, I attended the Fort William CAG last week, I think it was, as recently anyway, and fantastic to see all the amazing work that is going on, and that's great to hear about the thematic meetings. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, John?
Thank you, Mike. Just a quick question, really. I attended the Cool Community Action Group, the last couple of meetings they've had, and they're working on the draft locality action plan, and there was a few points that they said was actually that was the whole Lochaber area, and they were looking for more involvement from local councillors, but also a suggestion that it might be worth local councillors actually having a place on the Lochaber area meetings, so we could sort of follow things through. I don't know what you think about that.
So thank you very much for that, Councillor. And actually, I'm really chuffed to hear that you are attending these groups. It shows that support, and it also gives you a clearer understanding of what's going on. We found that to be very successful. The one thing that we have to be cautious of, if you like, is that when it's the full group, the core group that meet, when we have councillors come in, of course, you've got very specific needs for your specific area. So we have to sit and say, right, how do we deliver a holistic plan as a group while taking cognizance of what's going on in those areas, Cool, Kinlochleven, and Fort William. So absolutely, I think it's a discussion I probably have to have with the group as the core members, just to make them aware that that's there and it's maybe for consideration. And I would like to get back to you on that one, if that's okay. I don't want to say anything too much at this time. I think your attendance on the CAGs is absolutely first class and should be maintained. And the more you can do that and the more you can support that, the better, because you have a real clear understanding of what's being delivered and can support what's being delivered in your area. So I would always support that one. But let me have a conversation with the core group, if that's okay, and come back to you, Councillor.
Thanks very much, Mike.
Yep, thanks for that, Mike. Any other questions? Sarah?
Yes, thank you very much, Mike. Yes, I just want to endorse what you've said about all the hard work that's been done for Kinlochleven, particularly. I know you said that Kinlochleven is unique in itself. However, I do think not just for Kinlochleven, it's important that community groups are able to talk to one another and share ideas. And I'm going to give you one example. Sharing, for example, place plans is a very important one, because when they start, very often groups don't know how to handle it, where they're going, and sharing a place plan from another community would be very useful.
So I do agree, Councillor, and thank you for that. And I think what I maybe didn't touch upon there was the locality plan we're doing as one plan that covers the area where the CAGs will fit into that. So we'll have acknowledgement of them, but we'll have one plan which is almost like a blanket approach. But we'll also show in that plan there has to be specific needs for specific parts, and that absolutely is something we have to do. But we don't want a 12, 15-page document that somebody gets to the first 3 pages and is just fed up trying to read through a whole load of information. We want something that's quite punchy, grates people's attentions, it does that. Part of what you've discussed there, and we do this fairly regularly, and hopefully Dot will support that, is we invite a lot of our other partners, our sort of more local down sort of tactical ground route partners into the groups, the quarterly meetings, and we'll have conversations with them and we'll get them to talk to each other. So these things are brought to the table, they're discussed, and the community groups know that there's other community groups that are there. One of the problems, as you may be aware, is in Kinlochleven we had 2 very distinct feelings within the area, if I'm being tactful about it, 2 very distinct groups that had different opinions, and Emma and John have worked very hard on bringing that together to get one consistent approach, and that has been a real success story for me down there. That doesn't tend to happen elsewhere, but so we'll talk to Voluntary Action Lochaber, and they communicate with a lot of community groups, and therefore there's a real link there. And part of this plan and is creating those links from the ground up and top down, so that we're not missing anybody, so that everybody's involved. We are aware that we could have too many, but when we move towards that thematic, we can then put that message out there that says we're now looking at poverty, so we'll get the groups that really work on poverty and we'll bring them to the table and have a conversation in that period, so they go away fully informed as well. So that's the kind of pattern that we'll be working forwards on at this time, and hopefully that satisfies.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mike. I think that's it. So I guess certainly be great to have you back in the future to hear how things are going, progress, and how it's working with the thematic approach, etc. So that would be fantastic. And thank you very much for your time today and all the good work that's going on.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. Okay, bye-bye now.
Thank you. Have a good day. Hope the electricity returns. So we're moving on to item 5, which is an education update. And Murray, we've got Murray online. Thank you very much for joining us. So we've received the reports and digested them. I think, will you just be giving us a quick summary?
Yes, if that's fine. It's good to be able to present some reports to your committee this morning. And as you can see, Education Scotland have been particularly busy in your area over the past year. So I hope the reports give you a good summary of the published final findings of each of the inspections at the schools that they've visited. So I think if I start with a Harricle, I think the strengths and the practice worth sharing is something I particularly wanted to highlight this morning. And just to let you know that the practice worth sharing more widely, we've actually asked Lindsay Bradley, the head teacher there, if she will work with other schools in the West who have both Gaelic medium and English medium within their schools, just to share with them how she has got a Harricle to the point where the practice that's going on there is actually on the Education Scotland website and has been recognised as extremely good work. So I was particularly pleased for Lindsay and her team at Harricle, as it was just immediately after Christmas that they had the inspectors coming in, which is never a good time to enjoy a Christmas holiday when you've got that hanging over you. So I was really delighted with the report that Harricle received, both for the school and the nursery. So I say Lindsay has just since the October break going to be working with schools across the West and sharing the practice that she's been doing in a Harricle. So I'm looking forward to seeing the impact that will have in our other schools. And Lindsay is very much looking forward to that professional development for herself as well, being able to share what she's done in a Harricle. I don't know if there's anything you want to ask just in relation to a Harricle, or if you're happy for me to move on.
I think
to Barnaby.
Probably, yeah, happy to move on, and if
get questions at the end.
Are you happy if anyone has a question, or we'll just wait till the end?
Yep, that's fine, but whatever suits you best. So yeah, so moving on to Barnaby. Oh, sorry, Tom's.
You took me that quickly, you caught me out. I was just going to ask a quick question. I remember years ago we used to, like the vice chair of Lochaber Education would be encouraged to go around every school and visually get eyes on it, so that at a meeting like this, he could actually back up or just describe what he thought of the school. What is the protocol now if I wanted to go and visit a Harricle school as local councillor? Is that something you actively encourage, and how would I go about it?
Yes, councillor. No, I mean, I'm sure the head teacher would be happy to have a visit. I think it's always important to stress that when we have Education Scotland visits, the reports are very much a snapshot of what they've found, on that visit. And I think I'm always mindful of that. But I mean, if especially when you've had a good report like this, I'm sure the local community would welcome that support, and working with officers as well if there's anything you wish to raise. There's always that line between operational matters, which are very much for the officers and the area team to be looking at. But
Like I didn't mean specifically like a Harrickle school, and I didn't mean
no.
specifically any school that had just had an inspection. It was just like if I wanted to visit any school in my ward just to get eyes on it. I may have been in it 10 years ago or 20 years
Yeah.
ago, and I might have been a former pupil. What is the protocol? Like, should I just email the head teacher and say, give us a time that I'd like to come and look at the school, or whatever?
No, I mean, I think they'd be happy with that, Councillor McLaren, and just sort of copying myself into anything would be helpful as well. Thank you. Banavie, again, that was in December last year that Banavie had a visit. It was literally the week after Colette McLean had taken up the acting head teacher post that she received the email. So fortunately, Kerry Ann Young, who had been the head teacher, was allowed to continue to support the school through the inspection. And again, I think it was a very good inspection. And again, no further requirements for the school, no further visits from the inspection team. Moving on to RUM. Again, I don't think I've actually seen a report where the practice worth sharing more widely has had as much information in it as RUM has had. The head teacher was Liz Doyle, and Liz actually only started in her post in August last year at the beginning of the session. So I think for her it was just excellent for her to get that appreciation of all the work that she'd done in RUM since she came in as teaching head there for the school and the nursery. She really, as I said, she's transformed the learning experiences for the children on RUM. And I was absolutely delighted for Liz that she got that recognition of all the work that she had done last year. Spian Bridge, which was right at the end of the school year, as you will see, the inspectors are going to be making a return visit. So the authority is working very closely with the new head teacher. The new head teacher is actually Liz Doyle, who moved from RUM. So Liz was appointed in the last week of term just before the summer holidays. And already our collaborative lead officer, Kerry Young, and I were down at the school just a couple of weeks ago, and we can see already the difference that Liz is now making in Spian Bridge and is very much taking staff forward with the changes she's wanting to make and those areas of improvement that were clearly highlighted by the inspectors. So I'm confident that when the inspection team make a return visit towards the end of this session, that they will see a lot of improvements have taken place in accordance with what they want to see there. RUM at the moment has an acting head teacher in post, and we will be putting that to advert at some point this session. But again, for RUM, I was pleased that we were able to get an acting head in post before the summer holidays to give them that stability. And then St Bride's Primary School and Nursery, again, inspectors will not be making a return visit and are confident in the school continuing to make the progress that it requires. So I'm happy to take any questions in relation to any of the. I hope the sort of summary of the inspection findings is suitable for you and gives you a good indication of what the inspectors found. To say the full reports are available on the Education Scotland website and our public documents.
Okay, yep. Thank you very much. Thank you for the reports, Mari, and thank you for joining the meeting. I guess if I could just kick off with a couple of questions, just in terms of the grading scale. What does it go up to? Is very good the top, or is there very good, excellent, etc.? Just to get an idea of where we're rating on the grading scales,
Absolutely.
And also what support is available to the schools going forward so they can improve their gradings. And is it possible to potentially see what how these grades relate to past grades from inspection reports, and to the wider area, how they relate to grades across the Highland, Lochaber or Highland area, would be perhaps just to put it all in context. Anyway, I'll start with those.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. No, in terms of the gradings, you're right. We have excellent, above, very good. So you have excellent, very good, good, satisfactory, and weak. So that's the gradings that we have. In terms of support, the authority now have our collaborative lead officers who work very closely with schools. For your area, we have Kerry Ann Young, who was head teacher at Banavie, and Kirsty Clark, who was head teacher at Inverlochy. In addition, we have Mark Jones working with the sub-secondary schools, and Gavin McLean. So 4 collaborative lead officers altogether. The authority also has put together a programme of universal, focused or intensive support for schools, depending quite often if you have a new head teacher who's perhaps just come into post, this is their first school as head teacher, then initially they'd be looking at intensive support to give that head teacher. If a school is likely to be inspected, which a number of our schools are in the West, then you'd again be looking at that focused support to help them get prepared for an inspection. And then universal, for example, like a Harricle, where we've had an inspection, we know where the school is, and there'll be that lighter touch in terms of support for a school at a Harricle. So it depends very much on where we are in terms of inspection, staffing, and perhaps like Speanbridge, which was then following the inspection, that was intensive support. But already, because of the work that's being done by the head teacher, that's been moved to focused. So it's not a case of you start the school year, perhaps it is intensive support, and that's where you remain. It's very much looking at how you are improving, and the work that's being done, progress being made. You can then move, between those 3 areas. So universal, focused, and intensive. So that's been brought in, and I think that's working really well. The collaborative leads work very closely with myself. So again, intensive schools, I'll be, making a couple of termly visits with the collaborative lead officer. And Portree Primary, for example, this week is actually being inspected. So I was out yesterday meeting the inspectors for the scoping paper, and we'll be back on Friday with the collaborative lead and the inspection team for the feedback. So that's quite new, and I think a really positive way forward in terms of the support we give our schools now. In terms of past inspection reports, for example, in Portree, it's actually been 15 years almost to the day that the inspectors were last out. So I think it's actually quite difficult because of the length of time between inspections, if we were to compare grades or inspection reports from 15 years ago to now, because things have moved forward so much that I personally feel that it's quite difficult to compare like for like. And again, inspection teams can be quite different as well, and perhaps looking for different things. But I think the 5 reports that you've got this morning perhaps give you a good indication of what inspectors are looking for in terms of learning, teaching and assessment in particular. We also have short inspections and full inspections. So, for example, in a Harricle, there was 2 quality indicators being looked at, whereas in Portree, they're there for the full week, and there'll probably be 4 or 5 quality indicators being looked at as well. So each inspection can be slightly different. But as I say, all the information is on the Education Scotland website, but if you would like a report where we're looking at schools across the West, for example, that have been inspected in the past year, I can certainly get that done for you.
Yes, so I hadn't realised how, I thought the inspection reports might have been a bit more regular, which
regular, yes. The care inspectors, care inspectors tend to make 2 yearly visits to our nurseries. They're much more regular. But I think there's been quite a backlog as well in terms of the inspection teams being able to get out into schools. I know post-COVID, what Education Scotland were doing, they called them recovery visits, where schools were actually able to volunteer themselves for visits. And it was very much getting feedback from all stakeholders on how the school had managed the lockdown and the coming back into the school after the lockdown period. So it's been quite recent again that Education Scotland have actually been out and about doing these more normal inspection visits.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think maybe, I guess, do you feel that, you know, the grades we're seeing for these schools are sort of pretty average, you know, they tie in with what we're seeing across the area?
That's right.
I don't want you to take more time spent on.
No, I was pleased with these inspection reports, and I think even, you know, Spee and Bridge have given us a very clear direction for the school to travel in, and we're working very closely with the school, and the staff, I think, are also feeling confident with the progress that's being made this session.
Okay, thank you. I think, Sarah, did you put your hand up before or not?
Just want to ask, is it possible to have a list of the schools and how often they have been inspected? And particularly, I'm interested in the ones that have not been inspected for a long time.
Yep, I can get that to you.
Means that
15 years?
No.
But 15 years, and I'm aware of other schools that have been in that situation, and the reason why I'm worried that I see an inspection as an opportunity to pick up issues and give support to the school. So that means we could say that that school has not had that support for 15 years. In some respect, you could come to that conclusion. So is it possible to have a list?
Yes, I can get that to you. Yep, in your area.
Thank you.
And thank you for that. And Angus.
Hi there. On rum in particular, when we last had an update, there was an issue because the full-time teacher was on long-term sickness, and that the children there were getting a teacher provided when it worked with the ferries, and so they often missed out on quite a lot of time, say Mondays and Fridays. And the teacher's house had not been refurbished, but was planned to be refurbished. Can you give us a little update? How many children are there? Are they now getting full-time education? Do we have, is the teacher's house being rebuilt? Please.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, my understanding is there's 5 children in Rum Primary at the moment, and there's 4 or 5 in the nursery as well. The current acting head teacher and Liz Doyle, who was the head teacher, they are both been living in Wood Cottage, which the council rents, I believe, from Lochaber housing. So that's the accommodation being provided. The head teachers have been in the last, well, certainly last session and the current session, both head teachers used Wood Cottage. There was also a lodge provided by the council, which the early years practitioner and her family have been living in, which is right beside the school. And that was put on site just about a year ago, it was. Prior to that, the head teacher was in the caravan, which is provided, and the early years practitioner and her family were in Wood Cottage. So once the lodge was all put on site and everything, amenities connected, then the EYP moved into the lodge and the head teacher moved into Wood Cottage, and that's where the current acting head teacher is there. My understanding is then when the CCR teacher was going over to Rum last year, she was then staying in the caravan, which worked for her. And I know the CCR teacher we currently have going out to Rum, he has just been successful in getting another post, so we're looking to get somebody else to do that cover for the acting head teacher. But I think accommodation with the lodge going up last year certainly improved the situation for our staff teaching and working in the school.
So the kids are now getting full-time education?
Yes, yes. Okay, thank you.
I've got a question about the secondary school, but that can wait till the end.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Just following on, would it be possible, certainly for future reports, to give the link to the full reports that are on the Education Scotland website?
Absolutely, yep.
So we've just been having a quick scan of the website, and there's certainly a few schools that don't have education inspection reports. So I guess they'd be highlighted on the list that Sarah's asked you to provide, because yeah, there's obviously a few schools out there, including Lochaber High. There is no current education inspection report on the Education Scotland website. So, and also I was just wondering how, when they do the inspection, how's it decided what quality indicators the school will be assessed on? If you're saying some schools are assessed on different indicators to others, how is that decided? And
that's very much
of that?
No, that's very much by the inspection team. So the authority wouldn't be involved in that at all. You are literally advised that Education Scotland inspectors will be coming out on such and such a date, and that it will be a full inspection or a short inspection model. I think there's been more short inspection models because of the backlog that we currently have. So what it means is the inspectors will be in the school like 3 days rather than the 5 days. But that's from Education Scotland themselves. The authority are not involved in that decision at all.
Right, okay. So presume, do they decide on whether it needs a fuller or a shorter one, and the indicators based on their some sort of knowledge of what's already no? So okay.
No, not that I'm aware. No, it's very much for whatever reason, that's just what the Education Scotland decides. So sometimes it might, I think, it could be the size of the school, but there doesn't really seem to be a pattern to that either. So whether it's decided by the lead inspector, as each inspection team has a lead inspector, or I honestly, I really don't know the answer to that, but I'll perhaps ask when I'm back in Portree Primary on Friday to see if I can get some more information.
Because obviously a full report is going to give more insight and depth and what needs to be done going forward.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, that would be good to know how they make those decisions. Thank you.
Okay.
Building the list here.
I know.
Sarah's got another question.
Another thing about achievement, a lot of it, particularly in rural areas, is linked with issues with staff retention. I'd like to know where we are in terms of contracts offered to staff, because there seems to be a lot of short-term contracts, which means staff disappear to other places, and schools can easily become a revolving door, where children actually get lots of teachers, lots of changes, go through lots of changes. And the other thing is housing. I know some schools in some areas have a house for the teacher, but the house is not always used because the teacher may have their own house. In which case, what happens to the house so that it doesn't disappear? Because if that member of staff goes in, say, in 2 years, then the house becomes available again when we need a new member of staff. I've been dealing with a school I won't name the school, but in an area where that conversation actually, where the community was trying to have a conversation with Highland Council to see about the future of the school. It's been really hard, really, to get that conversation going. What's the situation about houses when a house is not used, but we need to keep it in future in case another member of staff needs it?
I'm afraid I can't answer that question just now, Councillor, but that would be a matter that I can pick up with my estates colleagues as well, who I work quite closely with when it comes to some of our school houses that I know we do have in some of our smaller schools. I'm aware of a couple that are used.
Because where the house is not being used, it could be used for other purposes, like, for example, staff, seasonal staff, that kind of thing, to help with the economy of the local area. Mm-hmm. But it's important that a house remains available in case one day we need it again for a new teacher. which will make it more likely that they will find a member of
You
staff.
can attract the member of staff. I know it's always all linked, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll look at that as well.
Thank
We
you.
can have a chat about that after.
And the contract point as well is a
Contracts.
good one. Not short-term contracts versus proper long-term roles.
Not just primary, that's also secondary, particularly in rural areas.
That's right. We have, a number of staff who are perhaps on fixed term contracts. You can quite often start on a fixed term contract and then you gain what we call permanency. So perhaps after a period of time, you then have permanent rights to a contract with the council. Again, I know workforce planning are always looking ahead because we have to be aware of probationers who may be assigned to the Highland Council area, so there does always need to be that level of flexibility. But I am aware that quite often staff are finding out at the end of the session, whether or not they have a contract moving forward. So it's something we're very conscious of, and it's that stability that I know staff and schools need to be able to make the progress that we're looking for as well. So it's something I'm very aware of and work closely with colleagues to try and ensure that we can give that stability to schools. But I know it seems to be particular areas seem to be harder hit than others. So I know it's a matter of concern for a number of our members.
Just before John's got a question, in terms of the temporary contracts, is there a time limit on how, when does a temporary contract, when does it become permanent, or is there no time limit on how teachers can just be on constant temporary contracts?
No, my understanding is it's like after 2 years you start to accrue permanency rights. So it would be the 2-year period, is my understanding.
Right. Is that at the same school, or once they've had two temporary contracts?
No, it wouldn't be. Sometimes there's a permanent contract to the school, or you could have a permanent contract with the authority, or with the ASG as well. I know some staff have permanent contracts for the Associated Schools group, so it wouldn't necessarily just be with the school that they're currently teaching in, but it would be schools within that ASG. Again, if there's specific examples that you want to discuss after the meeting, or directly with me, that would be fine.
It's a bit of an uncomfortable thing for a teacher because they can't, either move up with a partner or take out a mortgage on a property. It certainly doesn't happen in the private sector very much. It seems to be a very difficult one for junior teachers to have to agree to. I don't offer people temporary contracts very much. Making 0 hours look like a good thing.
John.
Hi, Mary. Thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you.
I'm not sure whether this is the right forum for this question, but I don't know where the right one is. So it's linked to Councillor McLennan's question about visits and so on, and also about contracts. I think as a councillor, I hear a lot from pupils, from parents, from teachers. I tend to get the reports when it's difficult or when there's a problem. So I accept that as a councillor, I have a particular perspective on schools and the education, and I get probably a lot of the bad news. In that you mentioned about operational matters, I'm unclear how that works or where the boundary is. So as a councillor, some education or some exploration of where the boundary is between operational matters and other matters would be useful for me. But also in terms of contracts and teachers' welfare and the few incidences where pupils are actually really struggling and the school doesn't seem to be managing that. My question is, okay, as a councillor, what avenues do I take? How can I progress that and work with officers and yourself and the staff to actually reach a successful conclusion? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Again, I think it's making myself aware and me to work then closely with other officers and looking at the particular circumstances that's affecting each school, which the likelihood is I will be aware of as well. The school will no doubt have made me aware of the issues. And again, we have local standards for employment. It's not a case of it's just like Highland Council working by themselves. For example, when a head teacher is appointed, if they don't have the standard for headship qualification that's a requirement in Scotland, you don't actually give them a permanent contract, because that head teacher has 30 months in which they have to acquire that qualification. So in terms of that, if the head teacher doesn't already have that qualification when appointed, it's a fixed term contract. So there's lots of things like that perhaps parents, concerned members of the community aren't always aware of, but it would be good for you to know as well. So again, it would be good to work with you on things like that. If there's questions that you would like answers to, then I'm happy to work with you all so that we can all gain some knowledge into the workings of the education system in Scotland.
Thank you very much. I mean, there's just sort of being a bit more specific. There's issues in a particular school about curriculum and provision of certain subjects, and because English and maths are being prioritised, and there's the helpful additional learning needs, that actually some teachers are having time cut, and obviously that's affecting them in their value as a teacher and as a person. So issues like that, I know it's operational, but then there's also another sort of human and emotional side to it as well. So that's just an example. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, John. Angus.
Ori, can we ask questions about secondary school?
We've got Murray and John and Scott Steele are coming to the next area business meeting.
Okay,
so
I'll stay. Thank you.
That'll be fine.
Yeah.
Sorry, just a very quick
Yep.
one. Kinloch-Leven School has clearly got major problems. Can you give us a quick update about what we're doing about the head teacher being appointed and resolving the problems there?
Well, I'm pleased to say that I'm actually down at Kinloch-Leven next Wednesday. Hang on, let me just check the actual. Next Thursday, sorry, the 9th of November, where we are going to be interviewing for a permanent head teacher. So I was delighted we did get applications. So there's going to be the stage 1 for the permanent head teacher. That's the professional stage interviews for Kinloch-Leven. I'm also going to be interviewing next week with the acting head for the deputy head for the primary secondary next week as well. So I think in terms of the vacancies, I'm pleased that, see, that's next Thursday, the 9th of November. I've got interviews first thing in the morning for the deputy head for the primary, and following that, we're then interviewing for the permanent head teacher post. So that's the stage 1. Stage 2 will follow that, and I will be in touch with the local ward members about their availability for the second stage interview, and the chair of the parent council is aware of where we are with that as well.
The interview last time I came off Leven, we weren't allowed to ask any pertinent questions. So my recollection, anyway, I'll leave it like that.
No other hands. So I think is no other questions. I think so. Yeah, thank you, and I think Dot's and possibly you have made a record of the information to come back with. Certainly would be good to
That's
get
fine.
the full list of the links for the full reports and
That's
the
fine.
list of schools that still require. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you
for your
very
time,
much.
and we
No, thank
look
you.
forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Will do. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Have a
Bye.
good day.
Thank you.
And so item 6, noting the ward discretionary funds that have been awarded so far this year, and we've seen the minutes for the Lochaber committee held on the 8th of August, which were approved at council on September. So,
And you've got the islands.
and a final emergency item has been, which is item 8, the Emergency Islands Winter Boost Fund. So, and we've got Alistair Bruce here to tell us about that. So, good morning, Alistair. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, members, and special thanks for taking this as an urgent item. It is a big help. The paper before you is in relation to the Scottish Government funding provided to Highland Council, specifically to help alleviate the cost crisis in island communities, in this case, of course, referring to the small isles. This is similar to a report that we put before you this time last year, and those eligible will receive a payment of £127 per household. We are able to identify those eligible from our own council tax records and make payment through BACS, thus removing the need for individuals to actually apply. The project was well received last year, and the report seeks member approval to use the funding in accordance to the criteria set out in section 4, and I'm of course happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, Alistair. Any questions?
Such a small amount of money. That's the disappointing. How much was it last year? Do you know, last year?
Each individual payment was £155 last year, so the overall amount that we received is a bit less this year.
Okay, and I think Thomas has a question.
Yep, thanks. But take members down to 4.3, and it says, based on the proposed eligibility criteria set out in paragraph 4.2, 12 residents in the small isles will be eligible for an automatic non-recurring payment of £127. Each winter boost payments are also made to residents. It is an island, but it has a bridge that links it. And I would like to compare and contrast the plight of people who live on an island with a bridge to the people who live on the other side of the Corn Ferry. Whilst it's not an island, I can remember the European Union had criteria that if you had to drive 100 kilometres to go round a peninsula, that peninsula was to be treated as if it was an island because it faces a lot of the same pressures. So how do Skye and Rassay become like they get a special treatment here, and yet people who face problems like getting to peninsulas like the served by the Corn Ferry are not?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I think if this allocation came with set criteria for ourselves in terms of how we distribute the money, just as it did last year, and it is specifically aimed at island communities. But I take the point you're making.
Thanks. Because I think last year too we discussed this in terms of Neudaert. How could we progress a conversation about including Ardnamurchan and Neudaert in this? Who, you know, how do we do that? Who could do that?
Yeah, I would imagine representation to Scottish Government would be the key way to do that. How we do that, I'm less sure, but representation to Scottish Government, I would imagine, would be the point.
Okay, and I guess that would have to come from us local councillors, not Highland Council. Could Highland Council take that on, or does it come back to us?
I couldn't say for absolutely sure, but if direction from the meeting was that you wanted something referred back to Scottish Government in line with the comments made, I'm sure we could do that.
Yeah, that sounds like we'd like to. That would be great if that could be progressed. I'm happy to approve what this report and the amount, but if there could be wider discussion about these peninsulas that are basically mainland islands, that would be really good. Sarah.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you, Councillor McLennan, for reinforcing the fact that some peninsulas actually should have the same status as some islands, and thank you for showing that, reminding that the European Union perhaps have far more understanding of our rural communities than any Scottish or UK governments in the last 50 years. Now, in addition to that, to changing the status of and getting in or contacting the Scottish government about that, how about also a partnership with other local authorities? So if you look, for example, at Namurken, they have a lot to do with Mull in terms of connections. And particularly a few weeks ago, there was no current ferry. The road was closed, and the service to Mull actually was very limited because of a ferry situation. Is it possible also to have a discussion between Argyll and Bute and Lochaber and Highland Council to work on these issues? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not, my background's in the welfare side, so I'm not really sure what format that would take. But I could certainly take the feedback, the comments that you've made, to my line manager to refer back to Scottish Government in terms of how this was distributed. I mean, the allocation is very specifically for island communities. That's not saying there aren't difficulties out with island communities, but we can only distribute the money in terms of the way it's set out.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Alistair. So I think what we're going to suggest is a future area business meeting. We'll have a chat with Kate Lackey and Gordon Morrison because it's set within the wider context as well. But yeah, so we'll progress this. John has a question.
Just another slight point. If we're going to write to Scottish Government,
we're not going to write. Well,
contact the reduction to 127 this year from 155 last year, when the cost of living has increased and the conditions is considerably harder. That means there's a considerable reduction. Can we maybe address that issue as well?
Can we do that, Alistair?
We can certainly feed that back as part of the same comments that Councillor McLennan made, yes.
Okay, thank you. So is everyone happy to agree this paper?
Thank you for dropping it.
Yeah, I think we've agreed. So yeah, thank you very much for coming, and yeah, we'll continue this discussion.
Very good. Thank you very much,
future.
members.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Yes, you too. Bye-bye.
Okay, so that draws us to the end of this meeting.